Morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City. You probably have been alerted, like I have earlier this week, that our faith here is very much like some of the other faiths in town. We are a church that is politically neutral. And like some of the other churches, we want to encourage our members to be more politically engaged. We deem it important to support candidates up for election who represent our values and views. If we could only find such people on the ballot, it would be. And thus we are currently training our youth to run for office with a radical platform of espousing the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And when in Congress, they will vote yes on the Equality Act, protecting all civil and human rights for the LGBTQ community. But let me reiterate, we are politically neutral. Today, we will honor our high school graduating seniors into what is known as a bridging ceremony. They are about to enter a new life of rigorous academics, greater maturity, and an even deeper commitment to making the world more peaceful and just. As surely as spring unwraps the flowers, we send our youth forward with our love and support. Symbol of light and of knowledge, symbol of warmth and freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love. May we open our service, turning our hymn books, please, to number 63.
For our meditation this morning, I bring you this poem, Journeying. On long journeys, I find the tools and maps I need are tucked away beneath the surface of things. There, in the crannies beneath rocks and in secret pockets of land and my own heart. There, where mist curls around the base of mountains and fog covers valleys, and in the sweet places where rivers run, a tumult of water and sound. There, where I find green moss grows, and the heron lifts its wings, and sacred trees stand. Where I have found levers, a compass, a sextant, to guide me and scale the night sky, the horizon beckons away from home to no place I have known, yet the earth and its markings are familiar. The red clay gashes forth from brown earth, and the dim light glows. I can measure my steps from here to there in months and years, and countless joys and pains, the sorrows of parting from lovers, and the songs of love aroused, requited, and failed, a landscape that echoes the altitude of grief, the latitude of learning, the longitude of love. I have found my footsteps from years before, where I placed my feet in climbing rocks or stood barefoot in sand, the place where I held you, the place where you touched me, there in my heart, there on my face, there in my mind. I could not bear the weight of such memories on my own, not know how to transcribe them, but for the voices of Chesapeake, Huron, and Genesee, somehow the rush of rivers circumscribes, and waterfalls and oceans surround the place where I confront me. In my knapsack of suede and blue, where I collect such souvenirs as shells, stones, and feathers, these unsettled tools of wisdom atop clothing and notebooks and pens, I carry something beyond the evidence of travel, harboring the echo of voice and image of heart that taught me to grieve and allowed me to see how hearts could merge and divide, where a journey of many steps stopped with one movement, a shift from love to acceptance, with no resolution. I remain a witness to our joining, finding my path open with learning once grief is lost from the map of love. Now for bridging. I'd like to call forward our seniors and their teachers to stand here by the piano. And if we have young adults who are here this morning, I invite you to come forward and stand with Reverend Tom over on this side. Now, don't be upset that there's only a few. We have a truly vital young adult group, and many of them are on a retreat in St. George this weekend together. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? But I'm very glad that we have Maddie. Thank you. Maddie, you're representing many and a very important part of our community. Oh, we've got one more. Yay! Wonderful. Hear these words by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. In a house which becomes a home, one hands down and another takes up the heritage of mind and heart, laughter and tears, musings and deeds. Love, like a carefully loaded ship, crosses the gulf between generations. Therefore, let us bring up our children. It is not the place of some official to hand to them their heritage. If others impart to our children our knowledge and ideals, they will lose all of us that is wordless and full of wonder. Let us build memories in our children, lest they drag out joyless lives, lest they allow treasures to be lost because they have not been given the keys. We live not by things, but by the meanings of things. It is needful to transmit the passwords from generation to generation. On Bridging Sunday every year, we honor these youth who have completed the religious education we have offered for them and are now moving on to the next stage of their lives. We invite them to embrace young adulthood as Unitarian Universalists, strong and confident in their faith and in the community of love that surrounds them. Today, 6 high school youth are making this transition. I won't say leaving us, because it is our fondest wish that they will always remember this community as the one who nurtured them and their families, who supported them as they grew into adulthood, and who loved them into being. Each one of us who have been adults for a while now can likely remember a few special adults who guided them through the narrow channels of young adulthood, steering us away from rocky shores towards smoother waters and teaching us to ride the waves. If you have been that adult for one of these youth, I thank you. And I also take this opportunity to thank the teachers who have journeyed with these students throughout the year. Kristen Quinn, Derek Giersdorf, Jenica Davis-Hockett, Jillian Okarma, and Cooper. Can we give them some applause, please? To you who are bridging to adulthood, I am proud to have known you, at least for a little while. We all are. We are so proud of your accomplishments and so excited to see what you are going to do next. Our greatest hope for you is that you will find happiness and love in your lives. And our second greatest hope is that you will claim Unitarian Universalism as your own, that you will make this denomination what you want it to be, that you will find ways to serve it and to carry its banner on for future generations. We have gifts for you, and I'll invite Derek to present your gifts as I call your name and invite you to cross over and join our young adults and shake Reverend Tom's hand. First, Andrew Christensen. Miles Lee. Josie Messersmith. Asha Pruitt. Chloe Quinn. And Johnny Vismig. And now I have a charge for our young adults, our new ones, and those who've already tread this path for a while. I charge you with holding this faith. You must not abandon it, nor give up when it inevitably disappoints you. Rather, you must hold it accountable to your expanding vision of the world, to what your own inner voice tells you is right. You must stand on the ridge and tell us what lies over it, and lead us there no matter how arduous the journey. And you must leave a trace that those younger than you can follow, so that we may all reach that place together. With these words from our Unitarian ancestor, William Ellery Channing, I bless your transition. Each of us is meant to have a character all our own, to be what no other can exactly be, and to do what no other can exactly do. May each of you find the courage and the character to be fully and unapologetically who you are. And may each of you know that the doors of this congregation will always be open to you. Congratulations.
That interlude is about as joyous as I feel right now. And high school graduates, man, it's been a long haul, hasn't it? Yeah. Now, I remember when... No, we'll get to that privately. In the announcement, I just want to start the announcement that, following the service today is a very important time in the life of this church, namely our annual meeting. It's a congregational meeting where we gather to discuss all the important events of the church, and we look at how this church year has been and where we're going next, get to meet some new members of the board and look at the budget and just do all the things that distinguish Unitarian Universalist churches as really being hallmarks of the democratic process. And it's a very important time for us to gather as a congregation. There will be a luncheon served. It's a fundraiser for our high school kids as they plan to take their civil rights journey down south in the month of June. So be generous with your contributions, and so we will have lunch immediately after the service and then reconvene here, and we'll roll right along in the annual meeting. We're hoping we could actually start by 12:30, so eat fast and talk less, something like that. This is the time of year where we play Beat the Clock. A reminder that this Sunday is the last Sunday for two services for this church year, 9 and 11. Now it gets tricky and complicated. Next Sunday, Either write this down or make a mental note. You may want to write it down. Next Sunday, one service and one service only at 10 a.m. And just when you think you got it, the following Sunday, June 2nd, where we celebrate Pride Day, we're going to have a short worship service here at 9:30. And so we're going to run half an hour, quick cup of coffee, and down we go downtown to take part in the march. It's going to be a really good, exciting time for us Unitarian Universalists, because I think all 6 UU congregations are going to make an effort to be there at the march, and we'll be here hopefully in the worship service. And at 9:30, when we do a worship service, we're also going to have the interim minister at the South Valley UU Society join us, and I'm sure that he'll bring a lot of folks from South Valley with us. So hopefully it's going to be a really good vibe on June 2nd for Pride Day. So please kind of make a note. Also want to remind people in the announcement section, just a couple of time-sensitive things, a wonderful sing-along on Thursday night, the 23rd, with Jim Thornburg and Lori Shields. And we have just unlimited number of discussion groups about any conceivable topic. Gather here and we will discuss it. And when you're tired of talking, my God, we have opportunities for meditation walks and mindfulness meditation circles. So we hope, a really nice balance between intellectual discussions and also spiritual renewal and times for meditation. So we really try to serve this magnificent community as best we can. The offering at this time will gratefully be received, a chance to greet one another and wish each other a fine good morning. Our high school seniors are moving on in their lives, and as a church community, we celebrate their passage to a new landscape. We hope that we help provide for them a moral foundation from which they will expand their ideals, ideas, goals, perspectives, and a deeper commitment to making this world a better place. My own experience while in high school and attending the Unitarian Church in New York was a bit different from what our kids went through, I think. My high school teacher, facilitator, and advisor through all 4 years of my Sunday school involvement was a very well-known porn writer. That's New York. What can I tell you? He was actually kind of a celebrity, and we high school kids felt fortunate to be tutored by a writer who even had one of his books turned into a movie. Although we weren't old enough to go see the movie, but it's the idea that counts. Now, he took all the credit for my becoming a minister, and let it be widely known that he felt singularly responsible for shaping my morality to where it was suitable for the ministry. You know, I think privately he always wanted to be a Unitarian minister, but somehow just veered off in another direction. I sometimes wonder if my life or my ministry would have been different under the tutelage of another kind of Sunday school teacher, perhaps an accountant or an engineer. I'll never know. But life is a composite of experiences upon experiences, some of them invaluable, some of them utterly unique, all of them wielding some influence as we journey forth. We never stand still. We transition from one landscape to another. We pass from one stage of life to another. And sometimes we ritualize these moments as though walking through a doorway to a whole new experience. And so our high school seniors this morning, sitting on one side of the church, called forth and walked across the aisle. We're bridging then to a group of young adults. And so as they moved, they got to hang just a little bit and explore what it would be like to be with a new peer group, awaiting a new set of lenses to examine more closely a new set of challenges, deeply wondering what will evolve in this new stage of life. And so we honor this transition with a bridging ceremony, noting that bridges take us from one terrain to another. And crossing that bridge is a journey marked by great anticipation and excitement as you leave the solid footing of where you've been to an entirely new landscape that's unknown. Now, the excitement in doing this, the excitement can be unbearable, as I recently discovered while in Portland, Oregon, visiting two granddaughters. The 5-year-old is contemplating kindergarten. She will soon bridge to the school where the big kids play. She lives only a block and a half from what will be her new school, and she and I went there often to gaze out on the whir and blur of activity taking place on the school's playground. She went there by bike, a little bicycle with the training wheels, and I walking swiftly alongside of her. The school's demographics are interesting. 20% of the kids are white. All communications from the school sent home are written in Spanish, Vietnamese, Russian, and English. The mix of kids play very well together. They are really essentially of one voice and one heart. And regardless of ethnicity or culture, anticipating the transition to kindergarten is almost too great for all of their hearts to bear. And so the school developed a lovely ritual. At the springtime orientation held for everybody ready to enter kindergarten in the fall, each child was given a sunflower seed with instructions. They had to plant the seed in a cup filled with soil and promise to take good care of it. And then as a shoot began to appear, they were to plant it into the ground in their backyard and, of course, continue to take good care of it. And then their assignment was to watch the sunflower grow, and it would be a beautiful experience. The sunflowers are so beautiful if properly cared for. But then, at the end of the summer, when the sunflower begins to droop, the children will know that's the time now to enter kindergarten. This is the time to go to their new school. It's time to move on to a new adventure when things around you begin to droop. There's a lot of wisdom in that when you think about it. And so we pass from one stage of life to another. And these passages mark not only external changes, but involve internal transformations. Sometimes these passages are marked by loss, sometimes by entering a new community, but always there are new chapters to write, new bridges to cross, new stages in life to be embraced. Our life goes in new directions because it must. Time doesn't stand still. From the moment of birth until the last chapter is completed, we move through a series of endless doorways. We bridge constantly to new landscapes. We wait for the sunflower to droop, and then we move on. Now, institutions resemble personal lives because they too go through transitions. Change brings new excitement, new growth, new ventures. You never want to stand still and grow stale as a person or an institution. And so as my granddaughter peered into the schoolyard of her next phase in life, I also peered into my own next phase, another landscape entirely. It's called retirement. My excitement of exploring this vast new terrain is only tempered by my concern of whether or not I will be welcomed by my new peer group and whether or not they will play with me, which I hope. But the sunflower, metaphorically speaking, of course, the sunflower in my yard has 2 years left before it finally droops after a hearty 34 years in this congregation and 46 years of ministry in total. Although my high school Sunday school teacher is long deceased, I think we would have shared a good laugh at his lasting influence. Our church's Board of Trustees has been very supportive, if not downright loving, as we seek the best way to move on. Got to move on, both institutionally and personally. And more will be brought to light during our annual meeting as we look earnestly at the next 2 years for the best possible transition for this church and for me. Now, this should leave us with plenty of time to traverse relatively speaking, a long bridge, but we're going to do so in utter confidence. You know, the landscape may be new on the other side, but we are going to be ready for it. Now, I believe that for every bridge we cross in our lifetimes, every time we face the start of something new, we must be bold and imaginative. It's simply not enough to just arrive at a new place, but we've got to arrive with new ideas, dreams, daring, courage. And this is true for people, for institutions, and even for our culture at large. Now, a perfect example an opportunity lost by not acting boldly, was when our nation had a new doorway open immediately after the Civil War. Our country had a new landscape it needed to navigate. And a congressman back there, a congressman from Vermont, not Bernie, it actually predates Bernie, congressman from Vermont, Thaddeus Stevens, offered a bold initiative for the new landscape, accessible then after bridging from a devastating war to this wonderful opportunity, this opportunity to shape the new cultural landscape whereby all its people would be equal. It's in the period of transition that new ideas and perspectives can and must emerge. Bridging. I think bridging is just fraught with endless possibilities. That's the time. That's when the possibilities are so ripe for the plucking. Thaddeus Stevens proposed to treat the states that wanted to secede as territories to be supervised by Congress, thus protecting the new black citizens. He intended to confiscate the plantations on which masters worked slaves like animals and break up those plantations into 40-acre plots for the ex-slaves now to own. But this plan, which barely would satisfy what we would consider today as equitable, this plan failed to move forward because it was regarded as too radical. But this was exactly the time to be bold. It was a time for just radical thinking and action. This was a time to put dreams in motion, much in the same way that every institution, every person must seize the moment of change and transform that new landscape into something better, stronger, more viable, more meaningful. What happened then, inside of 12 years, federal troops left the South, and then soon thereafter, voting was restricted once again to whites only. The doorway leading to a country whose ideal was that all people were created equal. This door was slammed shut, and the old landscape prevailed. Nothing changed. And again today, as our nation, in fact our world, long to bridge to an environmentally sane existence to combat climate change, bold visions are dismissed as too radical, unacceptable. And I'm talking about the liberals here, those who wish to bridge timidly. They fear that anything bold will go down in flames. But as Alexandria Octavio-Cortez said, this is no time for moderation. Actually, never while bridging is a time for moderation. And as we stand poised to bridge into new ways of living, committing ourselves to a sustainable earth, some courageous leaders have presented the Green New Deal as a vision for the new steps we must take in our life's journey. But frightened by the new landscape, forever clinging to moderation, the Green New Deal is criticized for bringing universal health care, labor rights, job guarantees into the whole environmental mix. With the world on the precipice of extinction, the old thinking still asserts itself, claiming, they say it's enough simply to control pollution. Critics maintain that bringing in the problems of economic inequality and poverty and corporate concentration, these ideas are misguided. But the bold and new thinking that is emerging finally proclaims that which was needed to be said long ago. And that is that economic policy and environmental policy are really one and the same. The oil and gas sector provides 1.4 million jobs, but it depends on public subsidies. Economically, we support global climate change disaster. To reverse direction, we will need to make the same governmental commitment we've been doing all along up to this point, but creating new jobs in energy renewal with public funds. We spend $15 billion on farm subsidies, telling farmers what they can grow and where. Environmental policy cannot be divorced from the larger economic order. Some of you may recall on the first Earth Day, 1970, there was a visionary, though we don't think of him as such, Ed Muskie. Ed Muskie drafted the Clean Air Act back in 1970. But he added, most notably, that our environment, when we talk about environment, it's got to include the communities in which we live. The only society that has a chance, he said, is a society that will not tolerate slums for some and decent housing for others, rats for some and playgrounds for others, clean air for some and filth for others. Just as our nation simply cannot lose the opportunity for new thinking in this critical time of transition. Now, we must always remember that bridging is fundamentally about change. Or why bridge at all? And bridging to a new landscape provides an invitation to think out of the box, like Thaddeus Stevens, OAC, even Ed Muskie. You're leaving behind, you have to leave behind, the old ways of thinking. It's an invitation, at last, to think radically, abstractly, imaginatively, because at this juncture, everything is possible. This is the good news that awaits our church. Everything is possible. Now, this church is a community of doers. Commitment to justice is writ large throughout this institution. And for the next 2 years, you will have a great opportunity to essentially define, maybe redefine, who you are and the radically new direction in which you may want to go. Now, social justice will always be intrinsic to this church's institution, this church's identity. But the opportunity exists to bridge to a new landscape in which the exercise and the implementation of progressive ideals can assume new meaning, brighter hope, and even wider acceptance. You know, it's often said, and probably true, that every minister, deep down inside, has only one sermon. Now, I've run variations of that one sermon in this church for many decades, and you have been most gracious in receiving it without too many yawns. I really appreciate that. How exciting for you to contemplate a new sermon. How exciting for me to contemplate a new lifestyle with no deadlines, no hospital runs to the ICU, no annual meetings. Bridging is an exciting time for people and for institutions. And this Sunday marks the day that essentially you and I receive a seedling in dirt to nurture and watch it grow. We get to work on it, nurture it, admire it for 2 years before it begins to droop. There is much work to be done in the interim. The excitement, the anticipation, along perhaps with a little trepidation, are all part of this magnificent road, moving through a new passageway as we must. Time beckons. Now, it's far too early for farewells at this time, but the seed has been planted, and the journey towards transition begins now. So be it. Can we close our service turning our hymn books, please, to number 311. If we follow the dictates of an open heart and an honest mind, we will be strengthened as we prepare to bridge to a new experience. May we find moments of grace on our journey, and as we head towards a new venture, may we be touched always by love, wisdom, and gentleness.